I like literally don't. It's fine. I'm like, I like a good enough like Tam. Your toe. Namaste. Nurture the relationships and caring that surround us. Others argue that who we are is based entirely on genetics. According to this belief, our temperaments, interests, and talents are set before birth. From this perspective, then, who we are depends on nature. Have I read this?
Yeah, we're ready.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Sunday Dharma talk. Giving our introductory talk is Taiji Saotome. Taiji was born and raised an hour west of Tokyo, Japan, and came to the U.S. when he was 15 years old. He was raised with one parent practicing Shinto and the other practicing Buddhism, but had no interest in practicing in any religion as an adult. He studied electrical engineering and computer science in college and stayed in the IT and computer field for 35 years until COVID. Now he runs a real estate investment, general contracting, and property management business. He's been coming to the PZC since spring 2015. He took 5 precepts in December 2018. I almost said 2028. And answering questions today is Zen Master Dae Kwang. Zen Master Dae Kwang has been a monk since 1987 and received transmission in 1996. Zen Master Dae Kwang has traveled widely, leading retreats throughout North America, Europe, and Asia, including 90-day retreats in Korea. His interests include meditation practices common to Christians and Buddhists. He currently resides here at PZC. So thank you both for your talk.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy to see you. Some new faces, some old familiar faces. I was actually going to talk about many different things, but given the time, I don't want to compete with Eva to who can give the longest talk. I'm just sorry. I had to put in there. Yes. Anyway. So as Dave said, I was born elsewhere and I came here in this country when I was 15. And one thing that was actually left out in the bio was that I had been practicing the Japanese martial art of Aikido, which is a traditionally thought of as sort of like a defense martial art opposed to offensive martial art. But nonetheless, I had been practicing it for a while. That's because of my father, who is a world-famous Aikido master. You know, so if you're into that, you can look it up in the web and figure out how awesome he is. But I will sort of relate it to what I was going to talk about, which is a amount of effort and amount of time you put into something or anything, whether it's Zen practice or martial art, and what do you get out of it, or how do you get out of it? When do you get something, right? When do you get something? You want to attain something. You start something because you expect something, right, out of it, right? We all sort of raised from very early age, oh, you're 5 now, you got to go to kindergarten. You're 12 now, you got to go to middle school. You're 18 now, you got to go to college and learn something, right? So there's always sense of time and a sense of how much you're supposed to get out of that effort you put into it. And of course, we all know that just because, I have 30 years of experience in IT doesn't necessarily mean that I know anything about IT. Doesn't mean that I actually am good at it either, right? But yet here we are going around in the world thinking that, amount of effort you put into it is equal to amount of attainment or something you are good at, okay? So relating to that theme, I was practicing Aikido. I was young, ambitious, athletic, punk, if you will. And I had one day, at that point, I think before I was ready to go to college, I was talking to my dad. I mean, at that point, I was practicing Aikido for probably 3 years. On average, I think, if you practice for 2 to 3 years, you can get a black belt. In Japanese term, it's called shodan, which means, dan literally means steps, and the shodan is the first step. It's not the end of your attainment, but it's the first step in a long journey of learning something. I know that now, but back then, I was talking to my dad and says, hey, Dad, look at those guys who are getting second dan and shodan and everything else. I mean, those guys, clunky old people, they're probably about 30 back then. To me, they felt like really old people. I said, hey, I should be getting a black belt. Look at them. I mean, I'm so much better than them. Technique, everything else. And he looks at me and says, angrily, probably passionately, but he said, son, that is precisely why you're not getting your black belt. Right? And at that moment, I was kind of confused and confused, angry. I wanted to say something, but looking back, I understand that because there's so much more to being a black belt than just your technique or forms, right? I mean, years later, think about it, because I know so many 5th degree, 6th degree, 7th degree black belts. And I know for a fact that by the time you reach 5th degree black belt, you're in your 40s, 50s. So your physical ability has already peaked, but yet you still have a long way to go, right? And many of them, like for example, a friend of ours, my family, Ikeda Sensei, he reached 8th degree black belt. He's 80, it's like he can barely walk, okay? So what does it mean, right? But it means that he has attained the point of the mastery, not just the physical forms, but also understanding and also his ability to be able to disseminate and teach. It's almost receiving like Inca, the Zen master here. So anyway, so especially for those people who are here for the first time or have been coming here for a little bit of time, you also probably wonder the same thing. How long does it take for me to attain my enlightenment? How long does it take, or how long should it take before I actually take, your 5 precepts, like to get this, right? In my case, it took a while, but I think everybody varies, right? It could be a year, could be 5 years, could be 10 years, but is it good or bad? No, it's not that, right? It's not good or bad. It just is. So part of the reason that I came here was I was going through a divorce, and at that point, even though I was raised as Buddhist, Catholic, Shinto and all those things, I kind of hated it because I was made to go to Zen temple, and sit for 3 hours and what seems like forever in a form, and my leg hurt, right? So as a child, I hated that. But during the divorce, I felt like, angry, confusion, sorrow, sadness, whatever, all those mix of feelings that comes and goes. And thankfully, I was not suicidal, right? So here I am. But I start coming here because I wanted to get something, right? Or maybe I want to get rid of something, right? So it depends on how you look at it. I wanted to get some sort of security or feeling that, oh, I'm going to be okay. And I also, at the same time, want to get rid of, this sadness and sorrow and anger and all that stuff. So I come here and start sitting, 2-3 times a week, chanting, sitting, going to retreats and doing all these things. I was still not getting something, and I was, to be honest, I was a little disillusioned. And also the life got in the way and I started coming less, especially during the COVID. My stepmother passed away, not because of COVID, but during that time. It was a very chaotic time, and my father also developed the dementia, so I had to become the primary caretaker, so I start coming less, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that, more you put in, more time and effort you put into it, like I was initially, are you going to get something out of it, right? Not necessarily you already know that answer. And then also the flip side is if you stop practicing, or start coming here more often. You're coming sometimes not at all, right? I forgot who it was, but somebody stopped coming here for 20 years and they start coming back again, No judgment zone, right? So there's no right or wrong, and if you want to practice again, you're free to come here and practice again. In my case, I stopped practicing, or I should say, I did not stop practicing. I started showing up here, and I started showing up less often. But that doesn't mean that I was not necessarily practicing. So which is better, right? Because I remember distinctly during the COVID, I couldn't come here. It was an online Sangha and everything else. There was some moment of clarity that I got, oh my God, I think I got it. Once in a while, I promise you that if you sit, you have this moment of clarity, but it goes away. Just like anything else, you want it again, right? So you keep on practicing. So whether you practice a lot or practice less, there's no right answer. And then also, I want to basically encourage everybody to keep on practicing, no matter what, because I think that's what we do, and that's what we should do in this particular school. And Zen Master Dae says, I guess that was the Eva that was during your Master Tonggang said, there's a hermitage in the mountain, and there's a guy that's practicing for 30 years, sitting alone, And he may actually have clear mind, but Zen Master Sun said, oh, he has no wisdom. That's because, he's alone, and there's wisdom in practicing together. So I encourage you to do the same and keep on practicing no matter what. So that's really about it. Thank you.
So any questions this morning? Yes, please.
Encouraging practice. I asked you this question a while back, and you've been at this a couple of weeks now, I think.
I know how to dodge these questions.
Tony Sager once said he comes back to practice to recharge the batteries. He keeps coming back to just restarting, refreshing his view. Can you maybe talk to us about the persistence of practice and how it ebbs and flows and the perks of keeping at it?
Right. I actually don't know what that means. And the reason is because it's always right now. So the only time you're ever going to practice in your whole life is right now. You can't practice in the future, like give me 1 second of the future, and you can't practice in the past, so give me one second of the past when you practice. You don't have that. So all you have is right now. And Zen Master Sung is very clever when it came to Buddhist teaching. He called that moment world. We live in moment world. We don't live in Japan, we don't live in Korea, it always surprised me. Zen Master Sung-Sung's first language was Japanese because he was raised in a Japanese school.
Post-war.
Right. He's before World War II in Korea. So, and he lived for 6 years in Japan before he came here. So, his main translator was a Japanese professor at Brown University. I always thought that was cool, because Koreans are, as you probably know, Koreans aren't real friendly towards Japanese people. But he was, So, so you can have all that kind of history, like I speak German, I speak English, so what? You have to wake up right now. And when the Buddha woke up just now, then we call that enlightenment, but it's kind of a fake name. It sounds good, but it's just a name for something that actually we'd say it doesn't actually exist, at least the way we commonly think of existence as something that proceeds through time or something, my existence as a online tech worker or whatever, it's completely ridiculous because it doesn't exist. But we talk about it as if it does all the time. But we're talking about things that don't exist all the time, right? So one of my favorites is your true self. So in Zen we say, find your true self and help the world, okay? So the only thing that means anything there is helping the world, because that's the only thing you can do right now. Because give me one little bit of your true self. What? Are you kidding? So we call that emptiness, but it's kind of deceptive in English because emptiness in English doesn't mean what it actually means in Buddhist, like theology or whatever you want to call it. All it means in Buddhism is that things are always changing, and there's no essential, eternally existing thing that's there, right? Including so-called true self. So it's about returning to just now. So just now, the furnace came on, or there's a truck outside? I think, or the air conditioning just came on. Air conditioning, right? So, and that's it. You didn't get all the other stuff is gone, and none of the other stuff has come yet, so, assuming that there is some other stuff, right? So when the Buddha sees old age, sickness, and death, that's what we call emptiness. So emptiness just means that there's no self-existing, eternal, essential thing. So Middle Eastern religions, you'll notice, rely on some eternally existing, self-existing, I don't know how to explain it even, eternal thing. We call it God and Allah or Yahweh or something, I don't know. They have many names for it, right? But Buddhism doesn't have that. But we talk about your Buddha nature, but nobody ever says what Buddha nature is because it's infinite in time and space, so you can't actually talk about it. Interesting. But that's just intellectual crap, because what we're really doing is feeling the air conditioning coming out of the vent over there, and you're having to sit here and endure me answering Dave's question. So, welcome. That's what we say in Zen. Welcome. This is it. Hello. I hope you won. So we always think about getting something, right? Like he talked about getting. Did I get it or didn't I get it? Do I have my 6th degree black belt or not? Right? So, but even if you get a 6th degree or an 8th degree black belt, as he says, now you're senile and then you die, right? So what did you get? And does anybody even remember that you had an 8th degree black belt, for Christ's sake?
My father doesn't remember.
Yeah, he can't even remember it, and he's the one that has it. So there you go. So don't want anything. Live in this moment. That's called the moment world, and help the world in this moment. That's our job. But we think that it's something else. That's why we're attracted to like Middle Eastern religions are big time these days, right? Although they're kind of declining in the United States. I forget when I read something about Christian. Only 50% of Americans identify themselves as Christians, and it's been going down. I can really tell it's been going down in my life, but I'm over 80 years old, so I can remember what it was like in the 50s when everybody...
Islam is the fastest growing religion.
Right.
Or something.
But Islam has Allah, right? But Allah who? It's kind of like Allah ha ha. But don't tell anybody I said that. Exactly. Yes.
I want to see if you can help me understand something. I was recently involved with a project of generating new Dharma room readings, the book that we have
Oh, right.
on the altar. And what I did is I went through our teachers, on the quantum schools, and I all the Facebook things that we get from quantum and from Providence Zen Center, and then just general Googling Buddhism. So I put in the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path in there, thinking that was a good thing, and then it was met with resistance, quite a bit of resistance, because that's not what our school teaches, and I didn't quite understand it at the time. I'm trying to research why that is the case, and then I'm starting to come across things like, gee, there's Mahayana Buddhism, there's Hinayana Buddhism, there's Theravada Buddhism, there's this Buddhism, that Buddhism, and I kind of come across a couple of things like in our school teaching in the quantum school, when you take precepts way down the line at your level, one of the precepts is to not teach the other vehicle.
Right.
So I guess my point being is that I'm confused why the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path was met with resistance.
Right.
I'm struggling with that. I read an excerpt in Bobby's new book. Bobby's new book, she has a section that's titled The Eightfold Paths.
I didn't read that.
And basically it says the Eightfold Path is, what the Buddha taught. It's represented by the 8 points on our lotus flower on the altar. But then it also states that we don't concentrate on that in our school. We want to experience that ourselves. If we sit long enough, these Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, we'll discover that ourselves. But I still am confused why there's division in Buddhism, I guess the bottom line.
Right.
I started practicing here because of the division in Christianity, in Muslims and Jews and 50 different kinds of Christianity. So I kind of came here to get away from all that division, and now we got some more division.
Now we got the same
And I'm
thing.
just
Yeah.
wondering.
Yeah.
I'm
I think
not
it's
sure.
because any organized religion will run into that thing because it has a social dimension to it. You're interacting with other people. So we have a person sitting in the back that's from Singapore. So Singapore is mostly a Buddhist. That's kind of a country. It's actually a city, right? But there's Hindus and there's Muslims. So when I go to Singapore, I don't walk around in lay clothes. I walk around in my Buddhist monk's clothes. So you'd think that, oh God, the Hindus and the Muslims are going to look down at you because you have on, I wear a particular form of Mahayana Buddhist monk's clothes, right? And if I go to Japan, they wonder, why are you dressed like that? But we don't experience that too much. But what's going on is some group is identifying as something to be able to teach. But in Zen, we always say, don't attach to the teaching. Even if it's good teaching, if you attach to it, then it stops being good teaching, right? So I dress as a Mahayana monk from Korea. So in Singapore, they don't like me much. Even other monks, you wouldn't think this, but other Buddhist monks don't like that, right? So that's what you're reading about when you read those kind of things. So we have in Buddhism we've got 2,600 years of fighting with each other essentially. So we can come up with all kinds of crap to argue about. But Zen is kind of interesting because Zen is really extreme in that it doesn't attach to any of that kind of stuff. So in Singapore, they don't really if you're Zen, that's as opposed to Buddhism. So Buddhism has become like a religion, right? So I'm always telling people, oh, I'm not a Buddhist, right? Well, what that means is I'm not a religious Buddhist. I'm kind of like maybe a philosophical Buddhist, like you hear Buddhist philosophy and the crap that I talk about like this. But as far as belief goes, do you believe in this Buddha? So Zen is famous for destroying these statues, you know. In fact, we have a saying in Zen, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. So no Christians are going to say that about Jesus. If you meet Jesus on the road, crucify him? Yeah, right, okay. Right? So that's just a difference in how it's conceived. But ultimately, every religion will lead you to let go of everything. Even in Christianity, you have to let go of your idea of God if you want to meet the true God, right? Because your idea of God will stand in the way of you actually encountering God, whatever the hell that means. So nobody really knows, right? So that's why we have mystical Christianity. Did you ever run into mystical Christianity? So I was raised in the Presbyterian church. Nobody ever mentioned mystical Christianity. What the hell is that, you know? And we have a moment of silent prayer in every Sunday morning church session. And let me tell you, that moment of silent prayer is the shortest moment in your life. Because nobody wants to do that. You're going to sit there in the pew supposedly without thinking? No. Right? So it's very short, and then they pass the plate. You know, because at my church they were more interested in passing the plate than they were in silent prayer, that's for sure. But that's just my Presbyterian church in Lincoln, Nebraska. So this kind of thinking is always floating around, and you'll run into it everywhere, right? So when Zen Master Sungsan lived in Japan, he mostly hung around with Koreans, but they all knew how to speak Japanese because they'd been living in Japan forever, right? So of course he would speak Japanese. So, but actually it doesn't make any difference. He's just there to teach Zen. So every language will have its problems. In fact, every language has this problem with expressing Zen because Zen can't be expressed. So how do you express the unexpressible? So it's kind of like describing a horse to a kid. You know, he can see videos of it, he'll watch it on YouTube, and blah, 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 until you actually have a horse or ride a horse. I think the first time I rode a horse, it knew I wasn't a real rider, so it ran right towards the trees so it could run underneath a low branch and knock me off. Right? So, that's cool. But you don't usually think about that when you think about a horse, you know. Yes, but you were going to say something
Forgot
else?
the question from going to the cushion to here. Forgot the question. But to kind of continue on that, when I was met with resistance, of course, I took offense to it. I got mad, I got angry.
Offense
and all
of what? Resistance to what?
to the having the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Paths published in our Dharma reading. So
yeah, right.
I was like, I got mad, I got angry. I started trying to prove a point. I did all of the things I'm not supposed to do. At one point, I was like, well, if we're only
They worked.
if we're only supposed to teach Zen here, why the hell do we have a statue of the Buddha on the altar? Why don't we have a statue of the Bodhidharma on the altar? And blah 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 blah. So I learned something in the fact that I dug my heels in, I acted like a child, and so forth. But the bottom line is that it all worked out in the fact that we have some additional Dharma readings. So I learned something from it. But I did have a different question, but I totally forgot what it was.
Good. So, the point is don't attach. It's about non-attachment. So it's okay to have these ideas about God or the Buddha or the eightfold this or the sevenfold that. That's fine, and they are instructive. So every human being will have this natural wisdom inside them somewhere, which will be able to assess the wisdom of that. So you have to let that be, and the way you let it be is by letting go. So everything is about letting go and not attaching to anything. Yeah.
Thank you. So I was raised, like practice makes perfect, right? Perfection, right? And so we do these practices, and there's always these end goals, right? So whether it's a belt or whether it's a blue ribbon or whatever, but at the end of the day, is it really just, I guess, is there no such thing as perfection? Is perfection just a construct that we've created, just almost like enlightenment, right? Where we're all trying to achieve this space of what we perceive as enlightenment, but is that really just a construct of our own mind?
Conceptual self is a construct. Even you are a construct, if you look at it very closely. Yeah, right. So from a Zen point of view, we want to use those things to help people, not attach to them. So one thing that was interesting about me as a person from Nebraska living in Singapore, I lived in Singapore for 3 years, is it's nothing like Nebraska. So whatever my idea was when I went to the mall, it just didn't apply, right? And everybody was speaking Hokkien Chinese or something. I don't know what they were talking. And then I'm just this white guy floating around. It's great being a white guy when you're a minority, right? Because in Nebraska, if you're a white guy, you're in the majority. But in Singapore, if you're a white guy, you're in the minority. So that's instructive. Okay. And then, so the thing is, don't attach to it. So the Buddhist teaching is about non-attachment. By using that non-attachment, not to ignore or to distance yourself from or to insulate yourself from anything, but use it so you can teach other people. And one thing it does, it makes you very flexible. So I spent a lot of time in KL, which is Kuala Lumpur, which is the main capital city of Malaysia, right? So that's a Muslim country, right? So here we are, we're in this Buddhist temple, and it's right in the middle of this Muslim neighborhood, of course. Everything's in the middle of a Muslim neighborhood in KL. So here we are, 5 times a day, we're bombarded. I mean, these mosques around the Buddhist temple, they intentionally point their loudspeakers right at us. So 5 times a day, you're just blowing out of your seat by this call to prayer. You can't miss a call to prayer there, that's for sure. So I thought, that's kind of interesting. I never experienced that. We don't have that in Nebraska. So the important thing is not to attach to any of this stuff. So we wear all this kind of cute clothing kind of stuff. I don't know if you think it's cute. This is Korean style. Right.
My daughter thinks it's cute. She wants one.
Well, come on, she can have mine. So it's how do you use these things to help the world? So some things are not expedient. We talk about expediency, right? So if I talk philosophically about Buddhism to you, that may not be expedient for you because you don't give a crap about Buddhism and philosophy and stuff. Although I spent my whole life thinking about it, probably. Because I have a degree in philosophy. Which means
Too much time.
I'd rather have a really nice roll of toilet paper than a degree in philosophy. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for the talk so far. It's been very amusing. Having grown up in New England here, in a culture that relatively more shallow than other cultures that have more deeper rooted spiritual traditions. I find myself gravitating towards reading philosophy and theology and exploring different religions. And similar to the ways you've described it, sometimes it can feel heavy and confusing and so much division and all that crap, right? But more recently, the more I meditate, the more I find elements of humor popping up. And there's a talk I heard by Alan Watts, the popularizer of Zen, back, 70s, 60s or something. Right. And he talked about, and there's an analogy that he mentioned that stuck with me about how describing enlightenment, it was like hearing a joke. And when you hear a joke, you get it. But if someone explains a joke to you, it doesn't kind of resonate the same way. And what I find over the years of exploring religions, I keep gravitating back to Zen because of the humor, I think, in a strong part. There's so much beautiful irreverence that I find here with letting go of dogmas, detaching from this, detaching from that, and just making jokes with each other. Can you talk a little bit more about the dimension of humor in your practice and your experience?
Thank you. Yeah, I don't understand humor. It's a spontaneous kind of mushing of concepts, I guess, or situations or stuff. So, yeah, one thing that humor does is allows you to let go, like that moment that a laugh appears. So we have this concept of the true self, which is not your thinking self. So when you let go of when you detach from your thinking self, then you become your true self, which is we call your intuitive self, right? So you'll notice that humor usually comes out of intuition. Because if you sit and plot it, like you say, it's like dead. Like it's like analyzing a joke. What could be more boring than that, right? So it points towards this direct experience of this moment, which causes you to laugh. Right. But that's not an intellectual response, it's a ha-ha-ha response. And I don't even know what a ha-ha-ha response is, but I do know it exists, right? So you cry, you laugh, you can think all kinds of things, right? But you don't, the big thing is don't attach to any of it. And how do you use it to help other people? So my theory is that humor is useful because it's a kind of non-attached way of talking about things, but that's not true either. Yes?
Yeah, I'm 20. I have chronic pain. My body hurts all the time. I spend a lot of the time when I'm meditating, like trying to detach from my thinking mind that's telling me, oh, this pain is bad, and just be like, pain is pain. It's a sensation. I also work as an EMT, and so I see a lot of old people who hurt a lot all the time, which is what happens to everyone eventually. Yeah, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about like how we think about pain, how pain is part of meditation and isn't, like how it's part of our lives, what it teaches us, what it doesn't, if it's teaching us anything.
Right. So from a Zen point of view, life is always teaching you, and your suffering is the thing that really teaches you. Because as soon as you start suffering, like you feel pain, like, I don't have one. Where's my Zen stick? So we use the Zen stick to hit somebody, right? But it's not intended to hurt them. It's intended to wake them up, right? So sometimes if you want to wake somebody up, you shout, right? Wah! So Zen teachers are always shouting, stupid. But what it does is it kind of wakes you up for a second, right? And that wasn't plotted, and you're not thinking about it. That's one thing that really fascinates me about Zen is this thing we call koans, the koan in Japanese, koan. Right. We call them kongons in Korean. They're kongons. So the more you'll notice if you do kongon practice, the more you think about it, the worse you are at it. And I think that's really cool. Because there's very few things that we do where the more you think about it, the worse you get at it. We usually think the opposite, like if I just think about German enough, I'll really be able to speak it. But that may not be true. So what it does is it kind of releases your intuitive self. It's a technique designed to allow your intuitive self to emerge. Like you probably, if you've ever had a Koan interview, you've probably experienced like this, that you'll experience an answer just appears in your mind, but that's happening all the time. You probably get enlightenment 8,000 times a day, and you don't even, because you always override it with your thinking mind. I want something, mine will take over and get rid of it. So what Kongan practice does, the more you think about the Kongan, the less you can answer it. Then when you stop thinking about it, you're out pulling weeds or you're kicking the dog or something, the answer will, oh, that's the dog's Buddha nature. Oh. Suddenly the answer just pops into your mind. But you didn't plot that. It just, because everybody has this incredible intuitive self that's beyond space and time. And most of the time you're acting against it or doing something, that causes pain or something for somebody else or maybe even yourself. I think mostly people abuse themselves. If you're trying to get away from an abuser, try getting away from yourself. So I'm not trivializing abuse, but it goes on all the time, everywhere, even inside of our own heads. So it's about letting go, let go, let go, let go, let go. Then inside, the theory in Buddhism is that inside of everybody has Buddha nature. They already have it. Because the first thing the Buddha said after he got enlightened was, how wonderful. Everybody already, and in 2 minutes this is going to be over, everybody already has it, but they don't know it. Because they don't know it, they suffer. So it's very interesting because he starts out by saying, everybody already has it. There's nothing to want, there's nothing to get, you already have it. It's about letting go. Then when you let go, a lot of these my theory is, this is just a psychological theory, your urge to hurt other people, like I don't like Japanese, right? Those things don't grab you as much, right? And then you can let go of them, and then you can use that to understand yourself and to help other people. So out of these bad experiences, like these painful experiences, from a Buddhist point of view, what emerges if you let go of it comes wisdom. So it's about having the wisdom, like he talked about. Not Buddhism isn't about going and living in a cave forever. It's about practicing with other people. So our kind of practice, we actually call it together action practicing, and that's to oppose this notion of, I'm going to be like Bodhidharma or something, and go live in a cave for 9 years. I don't know if you've ever been to Bodhidharma's cave, but man, that guy's tough if he lived in that cave for 9 years. So it's not about that. It's about wisdom so that you can help people. Are you doing the announcement? I am. Thank you for coming and listening.
Talks. So just a few announcements. We do have another Sangha workday coming up on June 14th. So if you weren't able to come and help us paint, register online. And if you did paint, take a break because it was a lot of work. We do have 2 retreats coming up. The next retreat is a Christian Buddhist retreat on June 21st. And we have a one-day Zen retreat on July 12th. That is with Zen Master Dae Kwang. There he is in the back. Summer and winter Kilcha registration is open. Summer Kilcha is coming up in less than a month now. We did make an announcement recently about a price adjustment to make Kilcha more accessible to everyone. So please go to the website and get more information and sit with us at the beautiful Diamond Hill Monastery on the hill. And then last but not least, save the date for Founders Day and Zen Fest, August 2nd and 3rd. Speaking of precepts, you can still, I think, apply to take precepts if that's something you've been thinking about. That's the ceremonies on Sunday. And at ZenFest, if you want to help us organize, or if you want to perform, or if you want to submit some art to be on display, definitely let us know as well. Today we will have refreshments as usual. The gift shop will be open, and we have some books on sale, so you can read them and then you can non-attach. Thank you.